show our appreciation for our Representative Gippy Graham and our Senator Marshall Long. What we'd like to do, of course, we're going to have a short program at first, and then we're going to eat, so everybody can take your time eating. So we won't be talking while you're eating, so if everybody finishes on time, it is. My name's Harold Robinson. I'm chairman of the Franklin County Democratic Executive Committee. And I'd like to, again, welcome and thank everyone for coming, because this is a great occasion. We're losing two representatives, a representative and a senator, but two people that have been near and dear to all our hearts, that pushed a lot of legislation for us, and they're going to be sadly missed. Derek, you've got some big shoes to fill, and I think you know that, but I feel like you'll be able to do it. But what I'd like to do is introduce the Master of Ceremonies tonight. It's someone that we all know. It's someone that's keeping me on time, and she's pushed me, said, you got to get started, Harry, you got to get started. It's our county judge, who won by a landslide, Judge Teresa Barton.
About the landslide, but I appreciate the comment. I certainly do. Well, greetings from Franklin County, from the Fiscal Court. I see several members are here tonight. I do want to welcome you to our program. As Harold said, we're here to honor and give thanks to two very special public servants who have stepped up in our community to serve us. Tonight, I'll start just quickly with Senator Long. He has served in the House from 1982 until 1998. And in the Senate from 1999 until this little thing called redistricting. And I'm not happy. But that's okay, I don't have to be happy. And also Representative Graham has been with us since 1995. And you know, one good thing about Representative Graham, if there was something going on in the legislature, he would always call me and say, I want to confirm your position. I want to make sure that what I heard last is how you stand on an issue, because that's the way I'm going. So I appreciate all you've done. That certainly makes a big difference to us. And he's our Valentine baby. I don't know if you've noticed his birthday or not. But he is our Valentine baby. One thing I'd like to do is introduce our head table. I'm sure most of you are familiar with everyone up here, but I would like to at least introduce them to you. On my far right is Charlotte Robinson. And then, of course, Harold Robinson, who you just met, David Taylor, who will give our invocation, Derek Graham, and he is our representative-elect for our area, so we're very pleased. His wife, Mildred, also Hank Hancock, who I think everyone around here is very familiar with, served a long time. I won't tell you how he told me to introduce him, though. And also, of course, our Honorable Gippy Graham. On my left is Marshall Long, state senator who we're going to miss, his wife, Claudette, the Honorable Joe Barrows, my husband, my better half, as many people say, John Barton, and our mayor of Frankfort, Bill May, and then Philip Milton. It's Lieutenant Milton, and he serves in our fire department, be singing for us in just a moment. One thing I want to make sure that I don't miss out on is introducing the elected officials in the office, who are in office or have served in office. I saw Representative Adrian Arnold. Where are you? Please stand when I call your name if you would, because I don't want to miss anybody. Our county clerk, Guy Ziegler, is here tonight. Squire Fannin, Ira Fannin, serves the 4th District. Ed Hatchett, our state auditor. Where's Ed? I guess not everyone's elected. Some of these people are appointed who are extremely important to administrations. We have Carol Palmore, Secretary of Personnel Cabinet. And while we're on important appointed officials, Fred Goins, my deputy county judge. And Justice Palmore is here from the Court of Appeals, retired. Yes. Our state treasurer, Jonathan Miller, is here. And also I have Houston Wells. Did I see? Oh, there's Houston. Great. There he is. Okay. Somebody help me. Did I miss anybody? Jack Williams, former city commissioner. And will you speak for us? Chris, well, he's not a current official, but Chris Gorman. Yes. Okay, let us begin our evening. If you'll check your program, we want to start with David Taylor is going to give our invocation. The pledge will be led by Derek Graham. The national anthem will be sung by Lieutenant Philip Milton, and then we will have dinner. So if everyone would please stand. David, if you would come to the podium.
Would you bow with me, please? Blessed Father, we're gathered in your presence and in the presence of friends, family, and loved ones to pay a special homage and to honor these two men, Gippy Graham and Marshall Long. We thank them for their commitment and their total years of service, for their tireless and endless efforts to make Kentucky a better place to live. We know the hearts of these two men, Father, and we know that you know them as well. And we ask tonight that you continue to guide their paths in all their future endeavors. May they in turn continue to seek your counsel. Thank you, Father, and we'd ask a blessing upon all the leaders that we have here tonight around our country and our world. We pray for them in a special way. Thank you for your good grace, and as we seek your blessing upon the food tonight, Father, and on those who have prepared it, it's in the precious name of Jesus that I pray this prayer. Amen.
Trying to fit through that little hole that you had me come through. Let us all stand and say the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave? Oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Good evening again, everyone. We're ready to go back to our program. I would like for you to take notice on the back of your program. The appreciation dinner extends our appreciation for assistance provided by Judy Campbell, our appreciation dinner chair. Judy, are you, there's Judy. Thank you. And of course, the Franklin County Democratic Executive Committee, our chair is Harold Robinson. I know a lot of people did a lot of work on that. And of course, no night would be complete without the wonderful steak dinner provided by the VFW Post 4075. I'm back. As well as the Ladies Auxiliary. Thank you, ladies. There they are. Thank you all. It's the best service in town. Also, of course, Cable 10, we have Dave Pike, our videographer. We appreciate you being here tonight. And also, since we began the dinner, a couple of our other officials came in, so I want to recognize Lambert Moore. He's the new magistrate for the 6th District. Lambert, you can stand. Thank you. We're excited to get started on fiscal court with a new member out of the 6th. That'll be nice. I saw Sally Hill Stumbo. I know that she's here. I hear her. There she is. And one other person I think important to a lot of the people here in this organization, and that's Doug Howard. He is our state Young Democrat president. On to the program. We have remarks tonight by some former as well as current state representatives, and we'll just follow the program right on. Next we have the Honorable Joe Barrows, and he does serve the 56th District, which includes several precincts in Franklin County. He has served since 1980. We're very proud of that and very pleased to have you. And he is also serving as the Majority Whip in the House. You plan to keep it that way, right? This is nonpartisan, don't mention that. At this time, I'll turn it over to Joe Barrows.
Thank you, Judge, and I appreciate the invitation to come and share some remarks tonight on what's a very nice occasion. First thing I'll tell you is I don't mind you being partisan at all. I want to thank all you all in this room for electing Derek Graham, because he'll be a tremendous asset up there and will help make my job a lot easier. And this really is a good idea. You ought to do this sort of thing for folks who have served so honorably and conscientiously as Marshall Long and Gippy have done. I just really think it's a good idea, and it's a good crowd. I think it's the same size crowd that was there last night at the end of the game at Rupp Arena. So, I'll tell you, you would need Rupp Arena really if all the people who owed and wanted to say thank you to both Marshall and Gippy for the job they've done in their capacity. You'd need Rupp Arena, and even that wouldn't be sufficient to hold all the folks that would ought to say thank you, because 38,000 state employees at the very least, and those that are retired and all that owe a great deal to these guys. It's nice to see some other folks in the room too, but beside the head table. You've recognized several of them, Teresa, already. Incidentally, Fred Bradley is not here, and he'd called me earlier, and he'd really expressed concern, really not about the event tonight. He wanted to know who's going to take care of his retirement now that you're all gone. But what he did was ask, Fred never missed a meal, and what he did was call Adrian Arnold up and ask Adrian to be a surrogate tonight and come down. I think next to Fred, Adrian may be right in line for those that enjoy a meal that somebody else fixes. And I had an interesting conversation here, just sitting there. A lady walked up to me and said, "Hi, I'm Margaret Fitzgerald," and she's here. Where are you, Margaret? Okay, she may be. And I said, "Oh yeah, I remember you now." And she said, "Well, I didn't want you to forget. You used to be my lawyer." And I said, "If that didn't epitomize my career, nothing have." And it's nice to see Carol Palmore. Carol Palmore and I graduated together in the same law school class, 1977, from University of Kentucky School of Law. Well, you just stole my punchline. Carol and I used to kid each other. This is true. Now, Carol and I used to kid each other about who was the last one admitted into that law school class. whether it was she or me, and we could never prove which one it was, but I was going to say one of our other classmates was Gatewood Galbraith, and that was sort of the good, the bad, and the ugly, I think. And Carol is the good one, and I'll leave the rest of it to your imagination. Now, this when you do a roast, it's good because you want to keep it light, and yet you also want to have some serious contemplation and a way to say thank you. And it's a tough job to balance that bit about being serious and being hopefully being funny. I just wanted you all to know that the funny part is really more difficult sometimes. And so if it doesn't come across that way, I just want for the record to let you know that when I served under John Y. Brown, I was hilarious. And I was equally funny under Wallace Wilkinson. But less so, and as I stand here today, I think I'm less funny now than I probably ever was. Maybe the sign of the times. Listen, I don't want to take up too much time. Plenty of folks have things that they want to say. I want to say thank you to Marshall. This gentleman here served with me in the House before he went to the Senate, and really epitomized what it is to be a good legislator. Never about self, but always about the greater good, conscientious, hardworking, and effective. And that I don't want to say those folks are at a premium in the General Assembly, but when you have one, you ought to say thank you when they decide to give up public service. I think that's at least one thing I have in common with both Gippy and Hank this fall is I, for the first time in a long time, didn't have any campaigning to do myself this fall. I want to tell you that was a wonderful relief. And I did have somebody file against me. This is true. Back in when we were in session in January, there was a Republican that filed against me. And people back home were saying, now, who is this guy? He lived in Versailles, and were asking me, do you know anything about him? I said, no, and I don't have time to worry about it right now. I'm in the session. I said, that's a fall race. I'll get around to figuring out who he is. And then probably sometime even before the primary, my next-door neighbor came over and told me that he'd withdrawn from the race. And so when people ask me now who was he, I tell him he's my best friend. He's getting a Christmas card this year, for sure. Marshall was such a good inspiration in the legislature that I not only went to him for advice on other matters, but regarding legislative matters, but I would also seek advice. And I have kids that are younger than Marshall's children, so in trying to get some advice on how you raise kids, I would go to Marshall for that kind of advice too on occasions. And he essentially told me this story about raising his kids that I'll repeat now. You understand it came from Marshall, it's not coming from me. But it was sort of that, how hard you can try to raise your kids, and you just can't be sure it's going to work out right. One Saturday morning, both of his kids were upstairs, and it's when they were young, age 7 and 4 and that kind of age. And they were up there before they went down for breakfast, and they were kind of talking and saying, now, what do you want to do today? The older one said, and the younger one said, I don't know, what do you want to do today? And the older one said, well, why don't we cuss today? and said, do you know any cuss words? And the younger one said, well, I've heard the word ass. And he said, well, I guess that would work. And the older one said, well, I've heard the word damn. Well, let's do it then. So they go downstairs, and Marshall's going to fix some breakfast, and he asked the older one, what would he like for breakfast? And he said, fix me some damn Cheerios. And Marshall, in that nanosecond of shock, before he realized what had happened, grabbed him and took him in the other room, and you could hear this, and administering some discipline, I think, was shocked and all that. And started crying, and so then Marshall went back into the kitchen and asked the younger one what he would like for breakfast, and the younger one said, I'm not sure, but you can bet your ass it's not Cheerios. The last time something like that happened on Channel 10, I think, was the Farm City banquet. Did any of y'all make that one when somebody told the turtle story, I think it was? So I think mine was a little nicer than that. Gippy Graham, I've said this many times about Gippy, that there isn't a more genuine and sincere person in the entire legislature. You knew that every time he did what he did it because it was something he genuinely believed in. And of course, there's not enough of that around either, where the politics or nothing else mattered more than being genuine, sincere, and representing the folks that he was elected by. And I will say this, he was a team player too. Now, Gippy coached a lot, I think, in his younger days before he got into public service, and I think that the lessons he learned there and the expectations that he tried to, and lessons he tried to teach as a coach, carried over into his service in the legislature in terms of being a team player, because he was dependable in that regard. Anytime, as majority whip, part of my job is to go around and talk to members about issues and what's on their mind and how they may feel about something, or sometimes telling them, we need your help on this, can you help us out? And it wouldn't, no matter when I would go to Gippy, whether it was on the House floor, during the heat of a debate, whether it was in the hallways, in a quick discussion, whether it was in a committee room, I could always depend on Gippy. I could go up and say anything to Gippy, and I knew I'd always get the same response. Huh? Hey? It's been a privilege and a pleasure to serve with both of these gentlemen. After everybody speaks tonight, I hope we'll give them a standing ovation. These are two quality class people that will be missed, not just by the people they've represented, but by the General Assembly in the state of Kentucky. And I'm so pleased to be able to say thank you all tonight.
Thank you.
I'm glad Joe's the comedian and not me. That was classic. Next, we're very privileged to have someone who everyone's very familiar with, been around for many years, and that doesn't mean you're old. We talked about that. I asked him how he wanted me to describe him when I introduced him, and he gave me this big, burly, some other language that I won't use. I'll just say he's someone we've all known to trust and be so thankful that served the House for 21 years, represented us very well, and it is Honorable Hank Hancock.
Honored guest, Judge, Honorable Derek, distinguished members at the head table, all distinguished guests out there, and friendly Republicans, if there are any, in here. Adrian, I'm a little bit confused. Don't you pop up and say, so what? What's new? I thought up until this afternoon this was supposed to be a roast. And then my wife comes home and said, Marshall Long saw me today, and he said, you remember this is not a roast. They've both been sitting up here threatening me about if I say anything bad. And then Joe gets up and talks. And by the way, I appreciate the applause we gave Joe. If those of you who don't know that, that's the shortest speech he's made in history. I don't know whether that's telling us something or not. But the truth of the matter is that when Ann told me that, she said, you're supposed to, I said, well, if I can't roast, she said, well, you're supposed to say something nice. That's kind of hard to do, right? Sitting up here in this and trying to say something nice about these two guys. She said, how do you do that? I said, well, it's very simple. You said, I'm proud to be part of this honorary dinner for these two distinguished people, Senator Long, Representative Gippy Graham, and then sit down and shut up. The people appreciate it. But as you well know, I never pay attention to Ann anyway. Let me say this, that the truth of the matter is, I want to congratulate all the elected officials, Judge Barton, Ticker guy, Lambert, all of you who just finished a very successful campaign. And I congratulate you on your victories. But the other truth of the matter is that people in this room, the Democrats and people in this room have been roasted enough this month in November. We don't need any more roasting. Election day was a roast. The LSU ball game was a roast. Last night was a roast. November's not going down very well in my book. It's got to get better. It's got to get better. Several years ago, a young fella who was a member of this chapter right here served his country, well known in his community, a Little League coach, a Little League ball player, distinguished family. Distinguished family in the fact that his father was a press secretary under another person who served as governor while Bert Combs was in office. And I'm talking about Polly Gorman, Chris Gorman's mother, that she did serve as governor while Bert Combs was in office. And anybody doesn't know that, that's the case with it. But she was a great person, and Chris, being a former Frankfortian, glad to have him back and do that thing. But fella had been involved in his community. He was in the JCs. He did everything he was supposed to do. He did it right, and then he ran for public office and he won. And I'm talking about Tom Easterly. And I just want to bring the chain of events that happened in this case. Tom, as some of you know, went on to run for Congress. He upset Congressman Breckinridge, and we thought we were riding high. Did an outstanding job, and shortly after that, he sort of gave it up and unfortunately lost him. He moved off to Florida. That set in motion for what we're doing here tonight. Another young fella, good friend of ours, sitting at the head table, Steve Wilburn, decided he would take up the challenge and for the senatorial job. Unfortunately for him, another friend of mine, Fred Bradley, also took up the challenge. That opened the door for Marshall Long to come in and run for state representative. A guy from Shelby County who had served his city well, who was a family man, participated in his church activities, participated in all his local activities in his club, well known in his community, had all the respect in the world, was the right person to be elected for that state representative job at that particular time. And 21 years later, after I'd said that, I stepped down, and the only thing Gippy said about me, said, "You're the one who got me into this mess." We had Gippy Graham. Gippy Graham was an icon of this community before I was hardly old enough to eat bread. And so I knew Gippy, as I said before, when I got the privilege of roasting him one time before, when I talked about Gippy-I, Gippy-I-oh. That's one of the very first songs. He was a star basketball player for Elkhorn High School. And when I was a kid, we just honored him. We just thought he was the greatest thing that ever lived. Great family tradition. The only thing I disagree with, that I have to come to a meeting like this and have the rest of the Thornhill Mafia say an invocation for me. They ain't things of looking up in years. But Gippy's family, his involvement in the community, his involvement, and then of course, as Joe Barrows remembers, he ran for superintendent of public education and ran I was strongly backing him. Joe had a friend in the House at that time that also was running the great. But the thing about it is, Gippy did everything to claim the esteem of this community that he needed to claim, and won the votes of the people that loved him and knew him. And that's what this is all about here tonight. When you look back, they did the right things to serve tonight. They're the type of people that any political party would want to go into community to select them to lead us and continue in leadership of this party or any other party. And we're very fortunate to have qualified for that and had that. So I'm especially honored to be here tonight. I want to thank you, Senator Long, you, Representative Graham. I want to thank you for your efforts. I want to thank you for your service. We thank you for your friendship, and we thank you for displaying all the qualities that a good Democratic leader should have, and we thank you for being members of the Democratic Party. Thank you.
Thank you, Hank. That was very, very well said. Next on our program, we have the Honorable Derek Graham. As most of you all know, he recently ran and won the Democratic nominee as well as state representative for the 57th District. So let's give a warm welcome to our former Mayor Pro Tem's many term commissioner, and it's Derek Graham.
Now, my wife, before I get started, I'm going to tell you what happened to me. The county judge came up to me and said, we're going to start in just a few minutes, and are you ready? And as of course, I'm feeding my face as always. And my wife leans over to me and says, and I said to the county judge, I said, how long do you want me to speak? And she said, oh, about 5 minutes at the most. And my wife said, I'll look at you and motion for you to shut up. So in a few minutes, she's going to start moving around in her seat, and I've got Sally Stumbo over there, and I know she's going to tell me when to sit down and be quiet. But it is an honor for me. I found out this afternoon that I was to speak, and I am very honored to come before you this evening to give our appreciation in this dinner to Marshall Long and to Gippy Graham. 8 years ago, I had the opportunity, I don't know if it was an opportunity, Gippy, or not, but we ran against each other, and as you all know, Gippy won. And I am really a believer in the divine power of God, and I think at the time that Gippy, you were the right man for the right job, and God knew that. And we in Franklin County have been blessed with the presence of your being on the floor of the House of Representatives to represent this district. I got a story to tell about Marshall. When Marshall decided to run in 1998, I went out with him and we were campaigning in the neighborhood. And I told Marshall, I said, wait a minute, we're going to stop here. I'm going to go in here. We're going to talk to some people. We're going to campaign. Marshall, remember this? He reminded me of this evening. He'll probably tell you the story when he has a chance to talk. And before he could get to the door, I had already gone into the door, had knocked. I knew who they were. I come out, and Marshall's coming up the steps, and I've got food in my hand, and Marshall says, man, you know how to campaign. But I've been able to, and I've always said this, and for those of you who have served on the Board of Commissioners with me through those 9 years that I served, I really do think that one of the greatest and the highest honor that you can receive from your peers, and in our case, in this community, is to have the opportunity of serving the people of your community. And Gippy and Marshall have had a combination of, if I'm not mistaken, 28 years of serving in the legislature. And I have on my room a poster that I think reflects what these two gentlemen are all about and what I try to do in terms of my service to my community. And it says basically this: the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. I think that reflects both what these two gentlemen have done in their service to this community and to this Commonwealth. And we are proud of you. We are honored by having had you to serve us, and Franklin County has had the opportunity of having honest and dedicated individuals who were diligent and committed to public service. And to the people of the Frankfort and Franklin County, whether it was to the 57th Legislative District or the 20th Senatorial District, we have been fortunate and we have been blessed. In Franklin County, over the last 40 years, we've had service of state representatives such as Ralph Bates and Bill Curlin and Ken Woods, who's in the audience tonight. Ken, where are you? Hold your hand up. And of course, Hank Hancock, who served us in the General Assembly for 20 years. And of course, Gippy. And on the side of the Senate, we've had such distinguished individuals as Hank mentioned just a minute ago, Tom Easterly, and after Tom, Fred Bradley, and now Marshall Long. And I can only just say, I know we're in this business of politics, but in politics, one of the things that I learned a very long time ago from people like Clayton Bradley and Helen Price is that your word is your word. That's the only thing you have in this business. And the one thing we know about these two gentlemen, and Joe, you can verify this, is that when they made their commitment and when they told you something, you could take it to the bank. And so we're thankful that we've had these kind of individuals to represent us. And I can only just hope that I can serve in the same capacity as the two of you have served, that you have served not only this district and the senatorial district, but the people of the Commonwealth as well. As an educator, as you know, I'm very committed to education, and these two gentlemen have always been friends of educators. And just to honor these two in terms of their role in terms of promoting education, tonight I want to announce that being on the board of directors of the state YMCA and kind of having known the director a little bit, I have this presentation to make to the two of you. On behalf of the Kentucky YMCA Youth Association and the thousands of teens it serves, and as representative-elect, I have decided to have place a commemorative brick at the Kentucky YMCA headquarters in honor of your outstanding leadership and untiring commitment to the young people of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Thank you, and may God bless. Thank you, and may God bless each and every one of you, and I just hope, I know, that we haven't heard the last of you two. We've still got a lot to be done in this state. And is in the Bible, it says, you have fought a good fight, you have kept the faith, you have done a great job. Well done, thy good and faithful servants. Well done. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Derek. It was very, very well said. Next, we're honored to have with us the mayor of Frankfort, and that is William May. He has a proclamation, I think also another special designation. Mayor May.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Judge Barton. I have to try to keep my voice. Before I make these presentations, I want to say a couple of things just briefly about each of these fine gentlemen. The one thing I'll say about Gippy is that whenever there were issues that dealt with Frankfort, he was always on top of it, out there in the front of it. And the cabin that we have on Fort Hill came as an extra little surprise because he was able to find $50,000, I think. 75, I'm sorry, he's correct. $75,000 in the state budget, and that's why I have that cabin up there. They rescued that cabin, and it was a team effort. There was other people involved, but Gippy really was out there pushing to try to come up with that money. And I've had the pleasure of working with him the entire time I've been mayor, the same time he's been in the House. So we've seen a lot of things. Back in the 2000 session, Senator Long and Representative Graham, along with Jack Coleman and Joe Barrows, helped us get the funding for the Home Street drainage project. So people who live in that area can thank them as well for that. There's a lot of legacies that you'll see. We won't go into every issue because it's too long, but there's a lot of things that they're leaving here behind that they have done that have made this community better. And I want to thank Gippy's family for sharing him as our state representative for these last 7 years that you'll have, 7 or 8 actually, when you complete this year. I know it's a big sacrifice, and you've spent a lot of time over the years devoting a lot of effort to this community, not only as state representative, but before that when you were a coach. And also, for Marshall Long, I've had the pleasure of working with him the entire career that he's had with the state legislature, because I started with the LRC staff in 1981. Actually, 1979, I worked in the special session. He came full-time in 1981, and then have watched him over the years go through the ranks from chairman of the Appropriations Committee in the House writing the state budget, and Joe can tell you about that too, how difficult that is. I remember watching him at 1, 2, or 3 o'clock in the morning, still down there hammering out the budget. And I think Gippy's also on one of the subcommittees that does that too, so they look pretty good for going through that kind of tough test. But Marshall's always been available to us, always seeking me out in the hallways at the Capitol, asking if there's anything that we need from our end. But he was always on top of things, and I think really the thing I really want to thank both of you all for the most is just your integrity and your leadership and your vision. And also, again, that $3 million you got for Home Street for us, just throw that in there too. That's going to be that's going to open up that area for future development. You'll see that things will really take off, and we won't see the end result of that for many years down the road. It's going to be an ongoing project, and you have to kind of look way into the future, and one day you'll look back and say, yeah, I kind of remember that started back in 2000 when that money was put into the budget. And thank also, of course, Governor Patton for that, and we do appreciate that. But again, Claudette, to you and your family, we want to also thank you all for sharing Marshall with us for these last 5 years in the Senate. And we're going to really miss him over there, really going to miss him over there, let me tell you. That's really going to be a big loss. But they're both fantastic gentlemen, and as a result, on behalf of all of the citizens in the city of Frankfort, we wanted to declare today a day in honor of your all service, and we also want to give you a key to the city that you can keep. As a former mayor, I know you know how important that is. It's the highest honor that anybody can receive from a city. That's fantastic having a former mayor to talk to. You know, we can talk about some of the up close and personal battles. If I can reach in here. And the nice thing about these, and it almost kind of is a joke, but I'll tell you all, the things come packed in a special box, and on the inside, says it can be used. It's a solid key, solid brass key and bottle opener. So smart. I mean, that's really, but it is an honor for us to present this to you. I don't mean to say it to make light of this, because this is an important thing. We do appreciate that, of course, from being a native of Franklin County. You know that this is always going to be your home, and I'll present this key to city to you. Thank you. You're welcome. And of course, this is your adopted home. We've adopted you, know that, so we present that key to you too.
Thank you.
And here's the proclamation. I'll read these proclamations. They both say the same thing. It says, to all to whom these presents shall come, whereas Marshall Long has served the citizens of Frankfort as our state senator since 1999, and whereas Marshall Long has served with honor and distinction and worked tirelessly for the benefit of all, and whereas Marshall Long has received numerous awards recognizing his vision, leadership, and concern for all Kentuckians, and whereas Marshall Long will retire from the Kentucky Senate effective December 31st, 2002, and will be missed by all of us in his district. Now, therefore, I, William A. Jr., Mayor of the City of Frankfort, Kentucky, do hereby proclaim today Marshall Long Day in the City of Frankfort, and give our most heartfelt thanks to Marshall for his service to Frankfort, and wish Marshall and his family the best life has to offer in their future endeavors. This is going to sound familiar, but it says, to all to whom these presents shall come, whereas Gippy Graham has served the citizens of Frankfort as our state representative since 1995, and whereas Gippy Graham has served with honor and distinction and worked tirelessly for the benefit of all, and whereas Gippy has received numerous awards recognizing his vision, leadership, and concern for all Kentuckians, and whereas Gippy Graham will retire from the Kentucky House of Representatives effective December 31st, 2002, and will be missed by all in his district. Now, therefore, I, William A. Jr., Mayor of the City of Frankfort, Kentucky, do hereby proclaim today Gippy Graham Day in the City of Frankfort, and give our most heartfelt thanks to Gippy for his service to Frankfort, and wish Gippy and his family the best life has to offer in their future endeavors. We'll miss both of you.
Gosh, a key to the city is a bottle opener. Exciting. Okay, don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. Next on the agenda, I do have something that's very interesting, that there's only one other that exists in this community. And the mayor said, what is this Duke of Franklin County you got? And I said, well, you know, there are other communities who have, of course, you got your Kentucky Colonel. I think there's a good old boy down in Warren County. There are a few things that, it's a special thing. It's more than just their day. This is a designation that is the epitome of service to the community. It just talks about, a citizen who has served with distinction. A lot of the things have been said tonight. So I wanted to come up with a commission that is so special to Franklin County. Of course, I've just started this during my administration, but it's called the Duke of Franklin County. So I have one for each of you, and I will read it. It says, "To all to whom these presents shall come, know ye that having given evidence through reputation, works, and deeds, being of such honor and respect, Marshall Long and Gippy Graham are hereby commissioned a Duke of Franklin County. I confer this honor with all rights, privileges, and responsibilities thereunto appertaining. From this day forward, I encourage all residents and citizens of Franklin County to take note of this commission and designation of the Duke of Franklin County, and to acknowledge this new designation by reference in any communication." Of course, you probably want to use Representative and Senator, but Marshall Long and Gippy Graham, by saying with pride, "He is the Duke of Franklin County." So I did this on the 19th day of November, the year of our Lord 2002, and the 207th year of the county in Frankfort of Franklin County. And it's signed Teresa Barton, and I have number 2 for Gippy Graham and number 3 for Marshall Long. It may not be that special, but it's very special to me. And next we have comments from family and friends. I know there are a few people out there who would like to make some comments. I see a lot of family here whom I will wait for our respective honorees here, I guess, to introduce. But is there anyone out there who would like to make some comments? I know many of you have served, Mr. Representative Adrian Arnold, and you probably would like to say a few words. If you would, please come to the podium. Uh-oh. Thank you.
Well, I too appreciate being invited to a retirement dinner for these two fine gentlemen, but first of all, I'd like to just share a little history with you. I came in the legislature the same day with Hank Hancock, and there was 2 others that some of you may remember. Is Don Stevens of that class. He was former insurance commissioner, and then there was some guy, I can't remember exactly, named Woody Allen came in with us. And but out of that class, Woody and I are the only 2 left, and I think he's retiring this year, so I'll be left there. And Derek, I'll need your help. They've all left me. I attend here tonight with a little bit of sadness. One is you hate to see people retire out of the legislature, and the other thing that makes me kind of sad, y'all had so many retirement dinners lately. On legislative salary, I can't afford all these tickets every little bit. You people guys quit letting these people retire there. Now, Derek, I know you're going to do a good job, but you just can't have that. I'd just like to see be very brief. I have served with these 2 people, and Marshall, I remember when he was in the House, sometimes took a very courageous stand. He would attack issues that most of the rest of us were afraid to tackle, but he would introduce that legislation. I can't remember all the different ones now, but I remember it took a lot of courage to do some of the things he did. So, Marshall, we appreciate your courage, and I think the state is a lot better position now than it was before some of those things. So, thank you again for your courageous endeavors in that area. And of course, Gippy has not been there quite as long, and Gippy is, as you know, had a long career in education, and he now has gotten very involved in community education along with Joe Barrows and myself. I play a minor role, but Gippy has done such a good job in community education that it's kind of a secret, but Kentucky is a leader in the nation in community education. We've been invited to several different states to help other states do what we've done, and so Gippy just got a notice today that he's going to Florida in January to help Florida to set up their community education. So Gippy, that's good. We appreciate you doing that. And of course, Joe Barrows has been also Joe Barrows has been a great supporter of community education, helped us with the funding, and we may try to get him to go down there and tell Florida how to do things. You know, Florida, back when they had the 2000 election, their election was a fiasco. And Kentucky's way ahead of them in election reform, and now we're going to show them how to do community education too.
Florida in January, I'll be there.
All right. But again, we really appreciate these two gentlemen. I hate to see them retire, but they've made a great contribution. But there is one little story. I don't have any on Marshall, but one I heard the other day on Gippy I thought was good. I just had to share it with you. As you know, Gippy had a hip surgery not too long ago, and then as Joe Barrow said, Gippy has a little hearing problem at times. And the other day, Gippy goes to his doctor about every 4 or 5 months for a checkup. And so he went back one day, and Gippy had this 27-year-old lady on his arm. He was stepping high, his eyes were bright, very vibrant. The doctor said, Gippy said, "What's this great change? I don't understand." He said, "What have you done?" And Gippy said, "Doc, I just did what you told me." And he said, "What did I tell you, Gippy?" And he said, "You told me to be cheerful and get a hot mama." And he said, "No, Gippy, I told you to be careful, you got a heart murmur." But again, thank you all for inviting me, and I know these two gentlemen, we'd hate to see them retire, but I know they're not, they are not finished with their contribution to their community and to their state. Thank you all very much.
Is there anyone else who would like to make some comments? If not, okay. If not, I will turn over to our guest of honor. You all sit through a long, grueling evening, and we certainly appreciate your patience as well as your contribution. And I guess we'll start with Representative Graham, please.
Thank you very much. This is very nice of you. And this is a great evening. I want to start off here by thanking everyone here that's made the comments, and thank you to the Democrat Party for having this. I want to be real serious here, initially, because I really am grateful. When I came into General Assembly, I was elected in 94, sworn in 95, and only been here 8 years. I see Marshall was, 14 years in the House? 17 in the House, and then terms in the Senate, 21 years. See, Hank, when I came in, Hank had been there 21 years. Someone asked me right after I was elected, said, "How many promises did you make when you were running?" I said, "I made one." And said, "What was it?" I said, "I promised not to try to serve as long as Hank." But Hank, was so successful. He made a big swath, big vacuum man. So all I had to do, Derek, was just to drop in. And I was carried. And now when it started slowing down a little bit, I move out and you got to dig, buddy. But we've had so many good legislators in this county. I appreciate Derek mentioning the former representatives and senators, because I was going to do that. Matter of fact, a year ago, I got thinking about those members of the House of Representatives that I could remember, and went back to Ralph Bates, and then Bill Curlin, and Kenny, and Hank, and then myself. And so one of the things I thought of, and I'm so proud I did because I got some nice pictures, was to have all of them come up to the House chambers. We had pictures taken together. We had pictures taken at the desk that each of these people occupied when they were there. And I've just felt honored. So Derek, I understand your feeling. We followed some real great people. Now, Joe Barrows is my friend. Joe has always tried to torment me. He first started tormenting me when I was a high school coach at Georgetown. And I was basically a basketball coach. I don't know how much time I'm supposed to take here. Okay. But I was a basketball coach at Georgetown High School. It's called Garth at the time. It's gone now, but anyway. I was a disciplinarian. Well, I didn't know much about baseball. Only time I'd played baseball was here in Franklin County when Ray Peden of Peden Motors would sponsor American Legion baseball team in the summer, 16, 17 years old. I grew up out Thornhill. We didn't have anybody to coach us out there. You know, we'd put a ball together and tape it up and things like that. But anyway, I tried out for the Frankfurt American Legion baseball team. And John Slaughter, those who've been around a long time know jarring John Slaughter. See, John and I both wore glasses, and his was thicker than mine. But John was a good football player, and we both made the baseball team. First 3 games we played, we started. I mean, we hit, but the 4th game we played, we went to Danville. They had a guy named Acton, and he threw curves. And each of us struck out 3 times each, and then Ray Peden put us on the bench. I never played another game. But Joe, I'm going to tell you, see, when I was coaching at Georgetown, I was coaching basketball. Since I was a disciplinarian, we had a bunch of seniors, and the superintendent came to me and said, Gippy said, I want you to coach the baseball team this year. I said, Mr. Gillespie, I don't know much about baseball. I only played it 1 year. I don't know. He said, we got an assistant coach. He knows all the techniques. He knows all the strategies. He said, you just be the disciplinarian. I said, okay. So I was coaching, and we had a decent team. We went over to play Versailles High School. And I looked out there in Versailles High School, and there was this little tiny fellow playing second base, I believe it was, or shortstop. Second, wasn't it? Second base. And someone was saying, and he probably wasn't 5 feet tall at the time. Something like 8th grader, I believe. I believe it was 8th grader. And people saying, man, we got us a good future baseball player, Joe Barrows. I said, where is he? He's at second base. I could hardly see him. But anyway, Joe tormented me. He was a good fielder. He's a good baseball player, but he started tormenting me. Then when I ran for state school superintendent back in '87, like Hank mentioned, I was out there just working like crazy going across the state. Joe was out there campaigning for Roger No. So he tormented me some more. Then I go to the General Assembly. And now Hank mentioned that this is the shortest speech that Joe's ever made. Now, I can't speak for that being the shortest, because it's the shortest that I've heard. But Joe doesn't know this. You know, as he said, he could always come to me and always say the same thing, you know, say, huh? You know. Well, one day Joe was on the House floor, and Joe has good things to say. He just, you know, he starts here, he's there, comes back. But he's a wise man. Anyway, after a period of time, I was out talking to someone, and they was talking about Joe's speech. Now, you people know history, English history. Remember Disraeli and Gladstone, prime ministers of England. They was in competition all the time. And Gladstone was the big speaker and more physically attractive and all this stuff, and Disraeli very bright and all this stuff. Well, one time, I'd read this, but this guy at the house said, you know, said, Joe reminds me of the speech today of when Gladstone had made a speech on in the chambers of the Parliament, and big flowering speech, and then Disraeli got up, he said, the gentleman, you know, Gladstone, is inebriated with the exuberance of his own verbosity. But I really appreciate Joe. Joe Barrows, it means so much to our county. I say this all the time to everyone. Joe is vital for our county. In the position he holds, he's one of the people that has sort of guided me when I was there. I tell him I feel sort of fatherly toward him because I've known him for so long, but he's the one that's in leadership. So I have, and he's given me direction, and I certainly appreciate his direction, and we need him where he is in leadership in the House. Marshall Long, when I went to the first session, now you can try to be up to date on issues, but it's so difficult. But when we would have votes and you got to push a button, my first session, and I've told Marshall this after the fact, when I would really be troubled and I'd hesitate, I would look up and say, what's Marshall Long doing? Because I just had that confidence that, if Marshall voted that way, it can't be too far off, and I would vote. And I was always admired and respected him, and I was so pleased when he said he's going to run for Senate to represent our county as well as Shelby County. Very, very nice. Of course, Hank left a legacy over there. People tell me all the time what great speeches Hank made on the floor.
I didn't say anything bad about you.
I know. And so he had that reputation. Hank also has his sweetest wife, Ann. They now live out on Elkhorn Creek, up by the fish hatchery, where as a kid I used to go, I was going to say skinny dipping at nighttime. But down at the fish hatchery, he now lives up on top of the hill. And I see Ann over to LRC quite often, and I tell her, Ann, you're the Empress of Elkhorn. Hank is the Grinch. But I appreciate it. And when I was first elected, Hank spent several hours with me talking about the General Assembly, in essence. And I really did. We got to sit beside the creek on a couple occasions there, and I appreciate him so much. Empress of Elkhorn. Hank is the Grinch. But I appreciate it. And when I was first elected, Hank spent several hours with me talking about the General Assembly, in essence. And I really did. We got to sit beside the creek on a couple occasions there, and I appreciate him so much. I always feel kindly toward Hank. And my mother loved him. My mother, today she died, she still had a little thing on the counter of the, in the kitchen with a little card in there, had Hank's picture, Hank Hancock, and he had one for Fred Bradley. She loved both of those guys. I want to thank those for the awards and recognition we've gotten. Teresa and Bill is very nice, and Derek and the YMCA. Appreciate all of that. It's really great to have been able to serve in the House of Representatives. You said, I don't want to be too long with you, but I do want to say a couple of things, okay? When I was an 8th grader at Thornhill School, I don't remember how it all came about, but I was reading something about the Roman Empire. And, when I was an 8th grader, we'd been in the war for a year, in World War II. And there was a lot of patriotism and things. But I remember reading this story about two brothers, Gaius and Marcellus Gracchus. And it told about in Rome that how the empire, when the city of Rome, city-state started developing, how that the volunteer army, farmers lay down their plows and hoes and things and go willingly serve in the army of Rome, and Rome expanded and went farther out and farther out. But then after a period of time, corruption set in. While these farmers would be out there, they weren't home to pay their taxes. And so those in the Senate began to become a little corrupt. And they would take over the property of these soldiers who had volunteered or was going to citizen army to go fight for the city of Rome. And to come back and they would have lost their land. Well, Gaius and Marcellus Gracchus, that starts G-R-A, Graham starts GRA. And don't you know, I can go back in my mind, and that's one of the first times I can remember thinking, someday I'd like to serve in a legislative body to try to help people. And then we had World War II, and our Boy Scout troops were gathering metal and papers on Saturdays to do things for our military effort. So that's how I really got interested in politics, and this has sort of come to fruition, and so I'm so pleased I've had a chance to do that. Now, in my final comments, I want to tell you that my service in the House of Representatives may someday be looked upon as a pivotal moment in the history of our state, and here's why. You see, I mentioned to you I went to school at Thornhill. My first 4 years of school was up on a building that's no longer exists. Up at the top of Swigert Avenue, it's a vacant lot, Leslie and Swigert corner. I went there 4 years. That school is now gone. The next 4 years, I went to what is now called the Thornhill Community Center. Well, people refer to that as new school. We think about that, the old school, we think about being new school, but it no longer is an elementary school. When I went to high school, I went to Elkhorn. Elkhorn, after a period of time, I was there 4 years. Shortly after that, it became just a junior high, and then they tore the building down. Then, when I got out of high school, I didn't know anything about going to college or anything, so I just got a job at Old Granddad Distillery, which is now, I worked there 1 year, saved some money to go to college, and now it's Jim Beam. Well, I started at college. After working a year, I went to Cumberland Junior College. I went there 2 years. It's no longer a junior college. It's 4 years ago. So I went into the Air Force and came out and I started teaching. I went to teach at Georgetown City Schools. I was the last teacher and coach of Garth High School. They built a new high school called Georgetown. I was the first coach at Georgetown High School. It's no longer a Georgetown High School. It's part of Scott County. I left there to go to teach and coach at a small college in Louisville, out on Shelbyville Road. Even most of you would not recognize the name of that school. It was called Kentucky Southern College. It's now the University of Louisville Shelby campus. So it no longer exists. Then I went to work for the State Department of Education. Now, see, I only taught at Kentucky Southern 4 years. And I taught at Georgetown schools 8. It took a little while to get them out. Then I went to the Department of Education. Of course, the Department of Education has been established for a long period of time. It's a large body, so it took me 16 years to have the General Assembly abolish the Department of Education in 1991. So I left there, I retired from there finally. They reconstituted, and I hung on for a little while, and then it came out. Well, then I ran for the House of Representatives. Now, I've been there 8 years. Now, think about my history. I don't know how much longer it's going to take, but it's very likely. I've said something in the order here. The main thing I was going to do, and I forgot I hit it right here, I wanted to introduce my family and my team. Now, I don't have all my family here tonight. Unfortunately, they just couldn't. Other things came up. I have my son, Randy Gibson, right here. Namesake. Stand up, Randy. I have my sister, Wimmel, right here. My sister, Aline, we call her Tudor, couldn't be here tonight, and so we're sorry about that. Then I have my son, Marshall Ray. Stand up. And he blessed me by marrying Patsy Manning. Stand up, Patsy. And they blessed me with a beautiful, sweet granddaughter, Marcy. Marcy. They also have a son, David Nicholas, and his wife, Mandy, and they couldn't be here, and I regret that. Now, we have my cousin, my niece, Lisa, down here. Lisa, Wimmel's daughter. I have a daughter, but many of you don't know I have a daughter, but I have a daughter, and she lives in Columbus, Ohio, and they have two children, a junior and a senior. His name is Graham. Her name, granddaughter's name is Caitlin. My daughter's name is Lynn. 20 years ago, guys, I think about this a while ago, 20 years ago, Lynn enabled us, our family here, to go to the Miss America pageant. In Atlantic City, she was Miss Maryland in the Miss America pageant, and she's just as pretty and sweet a heart as she is a person. And so I wish she could have been here. She and her husband could not be here. Well, then my team, when I decided to run, it was now 9 years ago, I called a few people. And I just told them I had an interest in this position, and I had not been involved in politics around here. But I'd been gone for different times over 25, 30 years. But these are some of the people I'm going to call out now that stood up by me and let the rest of the community know something about me. Yeah, because I had been gone. There was about a 30-year gap. See, I knew Hank when he was a kid. But I'd been gone to service and college and things, and so it was a gap. And some of these people just stepped forward for me. Now, David Taylor down here was one worked so well for me. And Ruby Layson. Ruby here has helped me so very, very much. Carol Banks has helped me during the sessions. She served as director. I followed Hank. I had a chance to help Hank one year as a caucus coordinator, and he had an education committee would meet every week, and I thought that was what a great thing he did. And so I followed Hank's what procedure he set in place, and Carol Banks did those things for me, and I'm so grateful to Carol. Then we have the Lancasters back here, Bob and Barbara. It was wonderful. They helped us so much. And Gladys Manning. Gladys is back there talking to Barbara right now. But Gladys is my mother-in-law by marriage. She's Patsy's mama, and so she's helped me so much. I look over here and see the Webbs, who really held me up and helped me so much. And Cecil has helped me during the sessions. And Cecil, I'm so grateful to you for all the help you've given me. And Charlie Hines is here somewhere. I see Charlie, part of that group that helped me from the very beginning to get started, and he's stood by me and is stalwart. Now, I think that's the inner workings of our team, but we just called ourselves a team. Scotty Green was chair. He couldn't be here. Harley was the treasurer. Harley Graham, he's gone to Florida. The Thornhill Mafia has gone to Florida. They got above the raising. Hey, listen, I've had a great time being with you, and I thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Gippy. Those are wonderful stories. We're certainly going to miss them, but we know where to find you. And next, of course, we have Senator Marshall Long.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm not very good at this retiring business, first time I've ever tried it. And I told Sharon today that I may not be able to get through this real easily, but I'm going to introduce a few people that came with me today. My son, Matthew, sitting back there in the back. Matthew will be my connection to Frankfurt. He works for the State Parks Department. My daughter, Hannah, sitting right here. Of course, my wife, Claudette, those of you who have served know that it's important that your family supports you, and I've always had that support from my family, and I really, really appreciate that, and I want to publicly thank them for that. My son Tyler and his wife Denise are at home, and my son David and his wife Anna, he had to work tonight, but they're in charge of my granddaughters, all 4 of them, and I get to be in charge of them usually on Sunday afternoon. But I want to thank all of you all for Judy Campbell for working to put this on. Judy's doing this despite the fact she insists that I made her walk uphill and tired Saturday afternoon over, I think in Thornhill, wasn't it, over in that area? She swore up and down that I made her walk uphill. She also tripped me over behind Kentucky State and cut my hand. But she was great to help me, and I appreciate it, and so many others of you. And if I start naming names, I'm going to get in trouble. But thank you so very much for your help. Joe Barris, that was the shortest speech. Now, Gippy, I've got to disagree with you for the first time. Joe does start here and here and here. Joe knows where he's going. It just takes him a hell of a long time to get there. But it's been a pleasure. It's really been a pleasure to serve with Joe and Gippy and Hank when he was there, and Fred Bradley. These guys are the biggest advocates for Franklin County you could ever have, and they've done a wonderful, wonderful job. They're great friends, and I appreciate them very much. I talk to Fred and those on a fairly regular basis. I'm going to tell Fred Bradley's story. He's not here, so Fred called the other day and said he'd met some woman down in Gulf Shores, and he wanted to know who it was. I said, Fred, what are you calling me for? I don't know who it is. He said, well, you know, and he starts to describe her. And finally we figure out that it's Bobby Brenner, who was the city clerk at Shelbyville, who I hired as a policewoman when I was the mayor. I caught all kinds of stuff from the city council from hiring a woman as mayor. And the first night she was on duty, I told her, I said, Bobby, you be careful, because if you get in trouble, you call the backup and be sure. Well, sure enough, she got in a bar in Shelbyville, and they got in trouble. The backup got there. They had 3 of them handcuffed, laying on the floor. She had the double-barrel shotgun pointed at one of them. Fred may have stepped into it this time. There's several other people I want to introduce. Ann Morris, who works on the leadership staff over in the Senate, been a tremendous help. Jody Hillard, who kept me straight and remembered every one of my birthdays, and I'll never forgive you for that, Jody, when I was in the House. These, you know, there's 2 Franklin Countyans that have become great, great friends, and the friends I've made here are something that I'll remember forever. And then especially I want to thank Sharon Washburn for all that she has done. She has worked with me during the time that I've been in leadership. Joe, I do want to say it's a whole lot more fun being majority whip than it is being minority whip. I agree with that. Hank Hancock, I came to the legislature, and Hank told me that, you know, I came out of a business background, and, you know, I wanted to cut government like everybody now wants to do. You know, I thought that was important. Hank explained that to me about the second day I was here, that I had 900 state employees in Shelby County. He explained it rather well. So I worked with him and followed him and did what he told me to do with state employees. I'm glad I do, because I think we have a great workforce in this state. I think the state employees give the people $1 worth of work for more than $1 worth of work for $1 worth of pay, and I'm very proud to have worked to help state employees a little bit in the time that I've been there. But Hank, and I'll tell one story we talked about a few minutes ago. Hank and I went in, and I think Joe was with us. We went in to talk to Governor Wilkinson about state employees. Carol, you will probably remember that. On the way in the door, Hank says, Governor, we've been trying to see you for 3 weeks. He took off his coat, as I remember, threw it into the chair and said, well, Hancock, I'll just stop all state government so you can come in. I tried to calm them down, get in between them, or do something like that. It didn't work very well. They never did have a very good relationship, and I never did understand. I think it really deteriorated when he tried to take money out of the retirement fund, and Joe and I fell out with him too pretty good at that time. But it's been a great privilege to represent this community. And I want to say to the judge and the mayor, how much I appreciate your all's help and guidance during the time that I've been in the Senate. You all are well served by these people. You really are. They work hard for the county and they work hard for the city. Sally Stumbo's back there and Houston Wells and people that I've worked with on the commission and in the fiscal court. These people work very, very hard for you. I know that. I've been to their meetings. I see what they do. It's not an easy job. I also want to again thank my family because without their support, it's very, very difficult to serve in the General Assembly. My wife always asks me, "You're not going to Frankfurt today, are you?" Yeah, I am. And so it's been a privilege to serve you all. I really mean it when I say this is a great, great community. My wife's ready to move here.
Yeah.
So there's an old country song that I heard the language to, in which the lady in the song said he had run into this girl after many, many years, and she said, "You don't remember me?" And he answered, "Only every other memory." I may remember you more, I hope to remember you more than every other time, because of the memories that I've got and the memories that we've shared, and the opportunity to work with the fine people of this community has been something I'll never forget. Thank you. One other thing I wanted to say was, you can't be all wrong when you come in with Fred Bradley, serve with Hank Hancock and Joe Barris, and go out with Gippy Graham. That's pretty good company.
If he's going to move to Frankfurt, I do understand we have a new district that has occurred, and we have a vacancy. Let's think about that. I do hope that you've enjoyed this evening half as much as I have. It's certainly been a pleasure to be part of this. I've enjoyed it, and I do hope you have as well. Next, we have the benediction that will be given by Harold Robinson, and then I will not lead you in the singing of My Old Kentucky Home, but we will sing in unison, My Old Kentucky Home. I'll turn over to Harold Robinson.
And ladies and gentlemen, I will not lead you either. So we need somebody up here that can sing. Let us pray. Our most kind and gracious and loving Heavenly Father, we come to you, Lord, to thank you for all the many blessings of life. Lord, we thank you for these two who are retiring. We thank you for what they've given. They gave so much to so many and asked so little themselves. We ask that you give us safe passage home. Forgive us where we fail you. In your precious name I pray. Amen. Amen. All right, everybody stand, and I'm going to cut the mic off.
Yeah, you better. Gippy can sing.
All right, go, Gippy. It's My Old Kentucky Home, and it's on the back. All right, let's start, Gippy. Sun shines bright on my old Kentucky home. 'Tis summer, the fields are gay. Everybody knows this. Weep no more, my lady. Oh, weep no more today. We will sing one song for my old Kentucky home. For my old Kentucky home. Far away. Thank you and good night.